I returned from a business trip and found my husband in our bedroom. What I did next ruined not just his marriage, but his career. Hi everyone! Before we get into today's video, I need your help. We've noticed that the channel's reach has been dropping a bit, and one of the best ways you can support us is by subscribing. It's quick, free, and helps us keep bringing you new and interesting stories. Your support means the world to us, and together, we can grow this channel. Thank you so much. Now, let's get to today's story. I'm writing from a temporary account for obvious reasons, and I've changed some details to protect my anonymity. I used to think loyalty was a virtue. Turns out, it's just another word for being naive. My name is Sarah, and for 12 years, I was the perfect corporate wife. You know the type, the one who irons his shirts at midnight because he has an important presentation, who cancels her own plans when his boss needs entertaining, who smiles at company parties while he takes credit for ideas she whispered over morning coffee. I was a senior marketing director at a Fortune 500 consulting firm, pulling in 6 figures while managing our household like a Swiss clockwork mechanism. David worked in finance for a tech startup that was always 6 months away from going public. We lived in a pristine colonial in Westchester, complete with a BMW in the driveway and a golden retriever named Winston, who greeted us with the same enthusiasm every evening. Perfect life, right? That's what I posted on Instagram anyway. The irony is that I should have seen it coming. The signs were there, scattered like breadcrumbs through our marriage, but I was too busy being the good wife to notice. Or maybe I noticed and chose not to see. It started with small things. The way David's phone was suddenly always face down during dinner. How he began showering immediately when he came home, before even saying hello. The new Cologne Tom Ford Noir Extreme that I definitely hadn't bought him. When I asked about it, he said it was a gift from his team for closing a big deal. I even complimented him on how good it smelled. God, I was pathetic. Then there were the late nights, more and more of them. Big project, he'd say, texting me around 9 p.m. Don't wait up. I'd heat his dinner in the microwave and leave it covered with aluminum foil. In the morning, the plate would be in the dishwasher, and he'd thank me with a distracted kiss on the forehead while scrolling through his phone. I should have questioned why a financial analyst needed to work until midnight 3 times a week. But I was traveling constantly myself. Client meetings in Chicago, conferences in Denver, a grueling 2-week stint in London setting up our European operations. I was tired, stretched thin, and frankly grateful that he seemed to be handling things while I was gone. The biggest red flag should have been Jessica. Jessica Chen, his new colleague who started at the company 8 months ago. Fresh MBA from Wharton, ambitious as hell, and according to David's casual mentions, really brilliant at market analysis. She began appearing in his stories more frequently. Jessica suggested this great restaurant. Jessica thinks we should pivot the Q3 strategy. Jessica and I are staying late to finish the Morrison proposal. I even met her at the company holiday party last December. She was exactly what I expected. Petite, polished, with that effortless confidence that comes from being 28 and having the world at your feet. She complimented my Diane von Furstenberg dress and told me how lucky David was to have such a supportive wife. We took a selfie together by the chocolate fountain. I still have that photo on my phone. I look at it sometimes and marvel at how genuine her smile looked. The discovery happened on a Thursday in March. I was supposed to be in Seattle for a client presentation, but their CEO came down with food poisoning and we rescheduled last minute. My flight landed at JFK at 2 p.m. instead of the planned Friday evening arrival. I was exhausted, irritated about the wasted trip, and looking forward to surprising David with an early homecoming. I took an Uber straight from the airport, still in my travel clothes, black Lululemon leggings and an oversized cashmere sweater, my hair in a messy bun. The house looked normal from the outside. David's Tesla was in the driveway next to a white Audi A4 that I didn't recognize. I figured it might be a colleague or client meeting. I used my key quietly, not wanting to interrupt if he was on a business call. Winston didn't even bark. Unusual, but maybe he was napping. The downstairs was spotless, exactly as I'd left it. I could hear voices from upstairs, low and intimate. My first thought was that David was on a conference call. That's when I heard her laugh. Not just any laugh, Jessica's laugh. I'd heard it enough times at company events to recognize it immediately. Light, musical, with that slight upturn at the end that made every man lean closer. I stood frozen in my own foyer, still holding my carry-on bag, trying to process what I was hearing. Maybe they were working on something important. Maybe she'd come over to review documents. Maybe there was a perfectly innocent explanation. But innocent explanations don't usually involve the sound of wine glasses clinking at 3 p.m. on a Thursday. I set my bag down silently and crept up the stairs, my heart hammering so loud I was sure they could hear it. The voices were coming from our bedroom, with the Egyptian cotton sheets I'd bought at Bloomingdale's, the framed photos of our wedding day, the throw pillows I'd arranged that very morning before my flight. "We should probably stop," Jessica was saying, but her voice carried no conviction. "Sarah's not back until tomorrow night," David replied. "We have time." I peered around the doorframe and saw them, my husband of 12 years and his brilliant colleague, sitting on my side of the bed, sharing a bottle of wine. Her shoes' expensive-looking pumps were kicked off by the dresser. His shirt was unbuttoned, but it wasn't the scene that destroyed me. It was what David said next. "I never thought I could feel this way again. Sarah and we're like roommates now. Has been for years, really. She's so focused on work, she barely notices I exist. You make me feel alive again, Jess." Jessica leaned against his shoulder. "I know this is complicated, but I think about you constantly. When you're in those boring budget meetings, when you're sitting next to her at dinner parties, I think about what it would be like if we didn't have to hide." "Maybe we won't have to much longer," David said, stroking her hair. "I've been thinking about what you said, about making a clean break, starting fresh." They were planning my future, or rather, my absence from it, while sitting on sheets I'd washed that morning. I backed away from the doorframe, my movements mechanical and silent. Somehow I made it downstairs, grabbed my bag, and slipped out of the house without a sound. I sat in my car for 20 minutes, staring at the steering wheel, waiting for the tears to come. They never did. Instead, I felt something I'd never experienced before, a cold, crystalline clarity. The kind of focus I brought to hostile takeovers and million-dollar negotiations, but sharper, personal. I drove to the Marriott downtown and checked into a suite. Then I called my assistant and told her I was extending my Seattle trip through the weekend. Some additional client meetings, I explained. She didn't question it. That night, I ordered room service lobster risotto and a bottle of Sancerre and began planning. The first thing I did was screenshot everything. David's text messages were easy. We shared an Apple ID, and I'd always had access to his phone. Months of conversations with Jessica were right there, color-coded in blue and gray bubbles that told the story of their affair in explicit detail. The restaurant reservations at places we'd never been together. The hotel booking in the Hamptons during a weekend he'd claimed to be at a conference. The intimate photos she'd sent and the ones he'd sent back. All of it methodically saved to a secure cloud folder. Next, I dove into our finances. As the spouse who actually managed our accounts, I had access to everything: joint checking, savings, credit cards, investment portfolios. What I found was illuminating. David had opened a separate credit card 6 months ago. American Express Gold, which he'd been using for his extracurricular activities. Expensive dinners, weekend getaways, jewelry purchases that definitely weren't for me. The Cartier bracelet charge from February was particularly interesting. $3,200 that he'd somehow explained away as a client gift for the Henderson account. But the real treasure was buried deeper. David had been moving money. Small amounts at first, $500 here, $1,000 there, into a separate savings account I didn't know existed. Over 8 months, he'd quietly transferred nearly $40,000 our money, from our joint accounts into his private escape fund. He was already planning to leave me. The conversation I'd overheard wasn't pillow talk, it was logistics. I spent the weekend building my case, like I was preparing for the most important presentation of my career. Every document photographed, every transaction traced, every lie cataloged and cross-referenced. I even hired a private investigator, a former FBI agent named Margaret Brennan, who specialized in corporate fraud and infidelity. "Honey," Margaret said when I met with her the following Monday, "your husband isn't just cheating, he's stealing, and he's been stupid about it. This is going to be easier than you think." By Tuesday, I had a complete dossier. Photos of David and Jessica entering the W Hotel downtown. Credit card receipts from restaurants in the city when he'd told me he was working late at the office in White Plains. Even surveillance footage from his apartment building garage showing her car there overnight on multiple occasions. The smoking gun was the apartment itself. David had signed a lease for a one-bedroom on the Upper East Side, apparently Jessica's suggestion for their fresh start. The lease was in both their names, scheduled to begin May 1st, less than 6 weeks away. They were planning to be moved in together by spring. That Wednesday, I did something I'd never done in 12 years of marriage. I went through David's laptop. His password was pathetically easy to crack. Winston's birthday followed by Jessica's initials. The man had no imagination. His browser history was like reading a manual for how to blow up your life. Divorce attorneys in Manhattan, apartment listings in Jessica's preferred neighborhoods. Even a Google search for how to split assets in New York divorce from 3 weeks ago. But the real gold mine was his work email. See, David wasn't just embezzling from our marriage, he was cutting corners at work too. Fudging numbers in client reports, inflating projections to make deals look more attractive, even skimming from expense accounts to fund his new lifestyle. All of it documented in emails he'd been stupid enough to send from his work account. Jessica was in on some of it too. As his brilliant colleague, she'd helped manipulate several client presentations, misrepresenting financial data to close deals faster. They weren't just having an affair, they were committing fraud together. It was almost romantic, in a sociopathic way. Thursday night, David came home at his usual time, 7:30 p.m., reeking of Jessica's perfume. Chanel Chance, in case you're wondering. He kissed my forehead and asked about my day while I heated up leftover Thai food. "How was work?" I asked, setting his plate down with a smile. "Brutal," he said, loosening his tie. "The Morrison deal is killing me. Stayed late with Jessica again, trying to get the numbers right." "That's nice of her to help," I said, taking a sip of wine. "You should invite her for dinner sometime. I'd love to get to know her better." He nearly choked on his pad thai. "Oh, that's really sweet of you, Sarah, but she's pretty busy with her own projects." "Of course," I said. "Rain check, then." I watched him eat while scrolling through my phone, occasionally making approving noises about the food. He had no idea that I'd spent the day meeting with 3 different attorneys, a forensic accountant, and a very expensive crisis management consultant. By Friday, I had my team in place. Richard Steinberg, partner at one of Manhattan's top divorce firms, specializes in high net worth cases and, more importantly, cases involving financial misconduct. His retainer alone was more than David's monthly salary, but I'd earned every penny of it. Carol Hernandez, forensic accountant who'd helped uncover the Enron scandal. If David had hidden so much as a penny, she'd find it. And Marcus Webb, former federal prosecutor turned white-collar defense attorney. Except he wouldn't be defending David, he'd be prosecuting him. The beautiful thing about David's situation was that he'd committed crimes on multiple levels. Embezzlement from our joint accounts, fraud in his professional capacity, tax evasion on the apartment lease, and about 15 different violations of his company's ethics policies. But I didn't want to just destroy him legally. I wanted to destroy him completely. That's where my professional network came in handy. See, the consulting world is smaller than people think, especially in New York. Everyone knows everyone, and information travels fast. David's company was actively pursuing partnerships with 3 of my firm's biggest clients, partnerships that could be influenced by the right conversation. On Monday morning, I had coffee with Patricia Morrison, yes, that Morrison, the one whose deal David had been so stressed about. She was a client of mine first, and more importantly, she was a woman who'd built her own empire after her ex-husband tried to screw her over in their divorce. "Patricia," I said, stirring my oat milk latte, "I need to tell you something about the team handling your account at Nexus Financial." I didn't lie. I simply shared facts. The financial irregularities I'd discovered, the misrepresented data in their proposals, the ethical violations that could put her company at risk if the partnership moved forward. Patricia listened with the focused attention of someone who hadn't built a $100 million company by ignoring red flags. "Sarah," she said finally, "I appreciate you bringing this to my attention. Nexus was supposed to present their final proposal Thursday. I think we need to reassess our options." By Tuesday, I'd had similar conversations with 2 other clients. Not about David specifically, but about the risks of partnering with companies that had poor internal oversight and questionable ethical standards. Wednesday morning, I submitted my reports to the appropriate authorities. The SEC filing detailed the financial irregularities I'd uncovered. The IRS report covered the tax implications of David's hidden accounts. The complaint to Nexus Financial's board of directors was particularly thorough, 30 pages of documented violations, complete with photographic evidence and expert analysis. Thursday was the day everything started falling apart for David. He called me at work around 10 a.m., his voice shaky. "Sarah, something insane is happening at the office. The Morrison deal fell through, and now corporate is launching some kind of internal investigation. They're asking for all my files going back 6 months." "Oh no," I said, my voice perfectly calibrated with concern. "That sounds stressful. Do you need anything?" I might need to work late again tonight. This whole thing is a mess." "Of course, honey. I'll keep dinner warm." I hung up and immediately texted Margaret, my private investigator. Phase 2 is go. Because while David was dealing with his professional meltdown, Margaret was delivering a very special package to Jessica. See, Jessica wasn't just complicit in David's fraud, she was married too. Her husband, Kevin, was a pediatric surgeon at Mount Sinai. Lovely man, according to social media. They had 2 small children and a beautiful home in Scarsdale. Kevin worked insane hours saving children's lives while his wife was playing house with my husband in Manhattan. Margaret's package contained prints of every photo, every text message, every receipt that documented Jessica's affair, along with a simple note. "Dr. Chen, I thought you should know what your wife has been doing while you're at the hospital." By Friday, Jessica wasn't answering David's calls. The weekend was spectacular. I spent Saturday at a spa in Connecticut, deep tissue massage, facial, the works. I needed to be relaxed for what was coming next. David, meanwhile, was spiraling. His company had placed him on administrative leave pending their investigation. 3 major clients had pulled their accounts, and Jessica had gone completely dark, not responding to texts or calls. Sunday night, he paced around our kitchen like a caged animal. "I don't understand what's happening," he said, running his hands through his hair. "Everything was fine last week. The Morrison deal was solid, the numbers were good, and now Jessica won't even talk to me." "Maybe she's just stressed about work too," I suggested, not looking up from my book. "You said she was involved in some of those projects." "Yeah, but—" He stopped, staring at me. For a moment I thought he might have figured it out. "Sarah, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Do you think we're okay? I mean, our marriage. Are you happy?" I looked up from my book, Educated, by Tara Westover, ironically enough, and smiled. "David, we've been together for 12 years. If I wasn't happy, don't you think you'd know?" He nodded, but he didn't look convinced. Monday morning, I filed for divorce. Not just any divorce, a comprehensive legal nuclear strike that would have made Sun Tzu proud. Richard Steinberg had crafted a masterpiece of legal precision that simultaneously protected my assets, while ensuring David would be held accountable for every penny he'd stolen. The papers were served to him at his office, former office, by a very professional process server named Janet, who wore a bright pink blazer and smiled like she was delivering birthday flowers. David called me 6 times in the first hour. I was in a client meeting and couldn't take the calls, of course. When I finally called him back at lunchtime, he was barely coherent. "Sarah, what the hell is this? Divorce papers? Fraud allegations? You're claiming I stole money from our accounts?" "David," I said calmly, "you did steal money from our accounts. $40,000 to be exact, for an apartment you plan to share with Jessica. Silence. Long, profound silence. How did I know? Honey, you used Winston's birthday as your password for everything, even your secret credit card account. Did you really think I wouldn't notice charges at the Cartier store when I never received any Cartier jewelry? More silence. We need to talk, he said finally. Actually, we don't. My attorney will handle everything from here. But David, that apartment lease you signed? You might want to check with Jessica about whether she's still planning to move in. I hear she's having some relationship issues of her own. That was Tuesday. By Wednesday, David's professional life had completely collapsed. The internal investigation at Nexus Financial had uncovered everything Margaret and I had found, plus a few extra violations their forensic accountants discovered. David was terminated for cause no severance, no benefits, and a formal complaint filed with FINRA that would make it nearly impossible for him to work in finance again. Jessica was fired the same day. Turns out her husband Kevin had shared our evidence with Nexus's board of directors, along with a very compelling argument about the company's liability for employing people who engaged in fraud and adultery on company time. Thursday brought the criminal charges. The Manhattan District Attorney's Office had been investigating financial fraud at several tech startups, and David's case fit perfectly into their existing probe. The charges included embezzlement, wire fraud, and tax evasion federal crimes that carried serious prison time. Friday was my favorite day of all. That morning, I received a call from Patricia Morrison. "Sarah," she said, "I wanted to thank you for the heads up about Nexus Financial. We've decided to move our account to your firm instead. Seems like you have better oversight of ethical standards." It was a $12 million account transfer, the kind of coup that gets you noticed by the C-suite. That afternoon, David showed up at our house. I was working from home, sitting at the kitchen table with my laptop when I heard his key in the door. He looked terrible. 5 days of stubble, wrinkled clothes, hollow eyes. He'd aged a decade in a week. "Sarah, please," he said, sitting across from me at the table, where we'd shared thousands of meals. "We need to figure this out. I made mistakes, but we can fix this." I closed my laptop and folded my hands. "David, what exactly do you think we're going to fix?" "Our marriage. I know about Jessica. I know you know. It was stupid. It was wrong, but it's over now. She won't even talk to me. I want to work on us." "Interesting," I said. "So you want to work on our marriage now that your girlfriend has gone back to her husband and your career is over?" He flinched. It wasn't just about that. I love you, Sarah. I know I haven't shown it lately, but I do. David, you told Jessica that we were like roommates, that I barely noticed you existed. You opened secret accounts, planned to move in with her, and stole $40,000 from our marriage to fund your affair. Which part of that says, "I love my wife," to you? I was confused. I was stupid. "No," I said, standing up. "You were calculating. You planned this for months. The only thing you didn't plan for was getting caught." He started crying then, actual tears, sliding down his cheeks while he begged me to reconsider. It might have been moving if I hadn't seen him practice similar performances before important client meetings. "Sarah, please. I'll do anything. Therapy, counseling, whatever you want. Don't throw away 12 years. I walked to the cabinet and pulled out a bottle of wine, the same Sancerre I'd been drinking the night I planned his downfall. You know what's funny, David? I didn't throw away 12 years. You did. I was perfectly content being your wife, supporting your career, building our life together. But you decided that wasn't enough. You decided I wasn't enough." I poured myself a glass and offered him one. He shook his head. "The thing is," I continued, "I've spent the last 2 weeks remembering who I was before I became your wife, and she's pretty impressive. She has a corner office, a client roster worth $50 million, and a reputation for getting things done. She doesn't need a man who lies to her face while planning his exit strategy." I never wanted to leave you, he said weakly. The lease agreement for your apartment says otherwise. May 1st move-in date, both your names on the contract. You were going to wait until after your promotion was confirmed, weren't you? Make sure your financial situation was stable before you pulled the trigger? His face told me I was right. Well, I said, taking a sip of wine, I hope it was worth it. That was the last real conversation we ever had. The divorce took 4 months to finalize, mostly because David kept hoping I'd change my mind. His attorney, a budget option since he could no longer afford Richard Steinberg's caliber, tried to negotiate a more favorable settlement. But when you've been caught committing fraud, embezzlement, and adultery, your negotiating position is somewhat limited. I got the house, the cars, and most of our assets. David got to keep his retirement account and about $30,000 in cash. Ironically, less than he'd stolen from our joint accounts. His credit was destroyed, his career was over, and he was facing potential prison time. Jessica, meanwhile, was dealing with her own consequences. Kevin had filed for divorce and was seeking full custody of their children, using our evidence to demonstrate her instability and poor judgment. Her legal bills were enormous, and without her Nexus financial salary, she was struggling to pay for representation. The last I heard, she was working as a freelance bookkeeper and living in a studio apartment in Queens. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, I got promoted to senior vice president. The Morrison account transfer had been the catalyst, but my handling of several other major clients during my personal difficulties had impressed the partners. They saw someone who could maintain professional excellence even under extreme stress. My corner office has windows facing south and west, flooding the space with natural light. I have fresh flowers delivered every Monday, peonies when they're in season, white roses otherwise. The walls are decorated with awards I've won and photos from client events where I'm clearly the person everyone wants to talk to. I love my life now. I travel frequently, but now it's by choice, not necessity. I have dinner with friends without checking my phone every 5 minutes. I read books that interest me. I bought a weekend house in the Berkshires where I garden and drink good wine and never think about anyone else's needs but my own. Sometimes people ask me if I miss being married. The question always makes me smile. I miss the idea of marriage, the partnership, the shared goals, the intimacy of building a life with someone. But I don't miss being taken for granted, ignored, or treated like a supporting character in my own life. David, for what it's worth, served 8 months in minimum security prison for the fraud charges. He lives in a 1-bedroom apartment in New Jersey now, works for a small accounting firm, and drives a 15-year-old Honda Civic. I know this because Patricia Morrison's company occasionally does business with his employer, and news travels fast in small circles. He's not married. Neither is Jessica, though I heard she's dating someone, a divorced father of 3 who sells insurance. They seem appropriately matched. I run into David sometimes, usually at professional events we both have to attend. He's always polite, always asks how I'm doing, with the careful courtesy of someone who knows exactly what I'm capable of. I'm equally polite in return. The last time I saw him was at a charity gala in December. He was there as someone's guest, clearly couldn't afford his own ticket, wearing a suit I recognized from our marriage. It looked tired, like he did. He approached me during cocktail hour, probably working up the courage all evening. "Sarah," he said, "you look incredible." I did. Custom Armani gown, Louboutin heels, and a confidence that comes from knowing exactly who you are and what you're worth. "Thank you," I said. "How are you?" "I'm good. Better. I've been thinking about you lately." "Oh?" I wanted to say I'm sorry, really sorry, for everything. I know it's too late, but I needed you to hear that. I looked at him, really looked, and saw a broken man who'd finally understood what he'd lost. For just a moment, I felt something that might have been pity. "David," I said gently, "I appreciate the apology, but you should know something. I'm not sorry about any of it." His face crumpled slightly. "I'm not sorry you cheated, because it showed me who you really were. I'm not sorry I found out, because it freed me from a marriage that was making me smaller. and I'm definitely not sorry about how I handled it, because it taught me that I'm much stronger than I ever knew. I finished my champagne and set the glass on a passing tray. "I hope you've learned from this experience too," I said, "and I hope you find someone who makes you want to be better than you were with me." I walked away then, leaving him standing alone by the bar. Here's what I've learned about revenge. The best kind isn't about destroying someone else. It's about building yourself up so high that their betrayal becomes irrelevant. David thought he was trading up when he chose Jessica over me. What he was actually doing was giving me permission to become the person I was always meant to be. I didn't just survive his betrayal. I transformed it into fuel. These days, I wake up in my beautiful home, in my Egyptian cotton sheets that no one else has ever slept in, and I smile before I even open my eyes. I have work that challenges me, friends who respect me, and a life that belongs entirely to me. David gave me the greatest gift he could have, even though he didn't mean to. He showed me I didn't need him. And Jessica? She helped too, in her way. By being willing to participate in his deception, she proved that he was exactly the kind of man who would choose someone with flexible ethics over someone with integrity. I'm grateful to both of them, honestly. They saved me from wasting any more years on a marriage that was already over. Sometimes people ask me if I think David has learned his lesson. They want to know if I think he'll cheat on the next woman, if he understands what he lost, if he's genuinely sorry. I tell them it doesn't matter. His learning curve isn't my responsibility anymore. What matters is that I learned mine. I am not the kind of woman who begs to be chosen. I'm the kind of woman who walks away from people who don't know my worth, and I do it with such grace and strategic precision that they spend years trying to figure out how I did it. I didn't just leave David. I left him with a masterclass in consequences and a front row seat to watch me thrive without him. The divorce papers are framed in my home office now, right next to my promotion announcement, and a photo of me receiving the Professional Women's Association's Excellence Award. Some people might think that's petty. I think it's a reminder. I'm not the woman who used to iron his shirts at midnight anymore. I'm not the woman who made excuses for his absence or covered for his inadequacies. I'm the woman who discovered her husband was cheating and responded by systematically dismantling his entire life while building an even better one for herself. I'm the woman who turned betrayal into victory so complete that even my ex-husband has to respect it. And if that's not a happy ending, I don't know what is. Because here's the truth they don't tell you about divorce. Sometimes the marriage ending isn't the tragedy. Sometimes it's the rescue. I didn't lose a husband. I lost dead weight. I didn't lose a marriage. I gained a life. And I didn't get revenge. I got justice. The best part? I did it all without raising my voice, without losing my composure, and without compromising my integrity. I fought fire with ice, chaos with strategy, and betrayal with precision. I walked away from the wreckage not with a scream, but with the keys to everything he thought he could take from me. And those keys? They unlock a future so much brighter than anything we ever built together. David was right about one thing. I barely noticed he existed. Turns out, that was never the problem. The problem was that I noticed him too much.